write about one of these cases where the mom had a drug problem. She was arrested. But it turned out that she actually was a very attentive mom and had a drug problem. There are lots of people who are unattentive who don't have drug problems. So, I do think that the human beings are resilient. This is a thing that I have, kind of a beef I have with the current thinking out there, is that the human beings can recover from a lot. I had a woman in my caseload who saw some of the horrors of the war in Vietnam, very horrors. And she came back, she and had a successful life and had one bad moment that brought her into the system. But other than that one bad moment with her child who had been disobedient, who had done something any parent would be mad about, she blended into society. She was a normal person. And so I think that we are capable in our society, our human beings are capable of recovering from trauma, of recovering from bad things. There was one, we have to go to continuing education classes like a lot of professions. And one fellow who came in to talk to us was a multimillionaire. He was into a real estate, but he had been severely mistreated as a child, placed in foster care. He was kind of a rebellious kid, had some other issues, and he had a really bad series of bad experiences in foster care. But he recovered, and he became this successful business person. So I think that there are people, but I think that we need to talk about strengths more than, I don't want to minimize trauma. When everything's bad happen, when bad things happen to me, I'm not at my game. I'm not at the top of my, that's only human nature. But I think that we need to talk more about teaching kids and teaching people in general to be stronger emotionally. So that when you're hit with something that's whether it's a lost job or whatever, that you can recover more strongly than that. Like the woman who saw these horrors of war, she found it within herself to deal with this. And I think that we need to encourage people to have this strength of character. And I don't think that we have those institutions as much. One of the things that I learned, in college was that kids in rural areas have more opportunities to be leaders. They're more likely, because of the community, they're more likely to participate in sports, and more likely to participate in FFA and all those kind of things that give kids an opportunity to feel good about themselves, but also to have a quasi leadership role or quasi participation. They were, and if you're the president of the FFA when you're a kid, you're going to have a little pride in yourself, or you're a captain of the football team, or you're going to have a little more confidence in yourself. So when something does hit, you can recover from it. And I think that that's where we need to go more, because therapy, mental health is expensive. It's very expensive as far as a way to solve social ills. It's very expensive, and it doesn't often talk to guys the way that they need. Now there are people who become psychologists. Now it's roughly 2 to 1, 2 to 1 women to men becoming psychologists, and men's issues are going to talk about, like women will want to talk about women's issues more with a female counselor, and men will want to talk with a male counselor. And if we don't do that, if there's not the supply, then we really can't see mental health as a solution. A lot of people say, these social ills, we need to have more mental health services. But if you don't have the supply of the therapists that are going to really, the client's going to connect with, that may not be the way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, back to how you started that point about kind of the beef you have with it, just connecting that. Is it that you feel like the systems, kind of as you're articulating a little bit, they assume that humans aren't as resilient, aren't able to overcome, aren't able to get over things, and kind of if you mess up, that's kind of it's viewed more as, well, like you're not capable of, in the context of what we're talking about, caring for a child, that type of thing?
No, I think in fact that there is a big trend within the child welfare system to talk about strengths and needs, and to to focus on the strengths. And then, so I think that's partly to go back to kind of like a religious thing. I believe that I've always thought that the people had goodness at heart, and that helped me, I think, as a social worker to realize that yes, you may have sinned, to use a broad term, but you can be a good person. You can read, religious people would say redemption. Secular term would be restorative justice, and that's very important. And I think that's a goal that the system should have. How that it gets organized, that's where government can either fail or succeed. And I want to talk about a success that in San Luis Obispo County, if you were on parole and you get discharged off parole or placed on parole, you're back in the community, you're out of prison, you're required to attend a meeting, and you sit at the beginning at the front row, towards the front row, and the presenter goes, and then they're told to turn around, and there's representatives from all sorts of social service agencies. And these parolees are told, these people are here to help you. Homeless services, veteran services, mental health, all these kinds of agencies, public health, they're here to help you. And I think isn't that a tremendous message to a person? Here, yes, you did your time, but now you are going to become back part of society, and here's people who are going to help you. And I just wish that we did those things in other counties. I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I could see that completely. And I mean, I get the challenge of it, though. I mean, all these things, I mean, government is certainly one of the biggest framings to look at it, but it's just, you're trying to walk a tightrope, right? Like to where you were just prior to that point, the idea of redemption and that people can figure it out. That's a really important, powerful thing that makes society better when we embrace that, when we show people grace. But then the other side of that tightrope is the potential danger to children in the context in which we're talking about it, because if they don't get it right, if they don't, figure out their stuff soon enough, maybe that means a child's being hurt. So trying to balance those two, even what you're saying, right? You'll hear this in political sphere a lot about the services to offer to help. Obviously, that's a good thing. You should help people. You should give them what they need. But how does accountability fit into that? And where they need to do it on their own? And like, I'm not suggesting one is right or wrong. I think it just illustrates what we've been talking about through this conversation, that it's almost an impossible task in some ways.